Ash Hollow, a town steeped in whispers. Legends lingered in the air as tangible as the morning fog. Grant Manor, an ominous Victorian mansion perched atop a hill overlooking Ash Hollow. Locals told tales of a family met with a gruesome end, their souls forever bound to the estate. The manor's windows, dark and vacant, stared down at the town like the eyes of a predator. Those who dared to enter never returned quite the same. Yet for all its malevolence, Grant Manor held a strange allure. It was a Friday night. Three friends, Lisa, Ben and Jake, stood at the foot of the hill. Their laughter felt out of place, a discordant melody against the symphony of silence emanating from the manor.
Are you sure about this?
Don't be such a scaredy cat, Lisa. It's just an old house.
Yeah, Lisa. One night, then we can tell everyone we spent the night in Grant Manor.
The legend of Grant Manor was nothing more than a challenge, a dare whispered in the shadows of their favourite hangout spot. The iron gates groaned, as if disturbed from a slumber centuries old. Each creak sent a shiver down Lisa's spine. Ben led the way, his flashlight beam dancing erratically through the overgrown gardens. The house loomed before them, its silhouette stark against the bruised sky.
See? Nothing to be scared of.
His voice was a little too loud, a little too high-pitched. They stepped across the threshold and the air grew heavy. The weight of countless unseen eyes pressed down upon them. The floorboards groaned in protest beneath their combined weight. They were not welcome here. The air inside was stagnant, thick with the scent of dust and decay. Ben's flashlight beam cut through the oppressive darkness, illuminating walls lined with faded grandeur.
This place is creepy.
Relax, Lisa. It's just an old house. Probably hasn't been lived in for decades.
They moved deeper into the house, each footstep echoing like a drumbeat in the oppressive silence. The only light came from their flashlights, small beacons of hope in the face of encroaching darkness. A sudden sound cut through the silence.
Did you hear that?
Lisa stopped dead in her tracks, her voice barely a whisper.
Hear what?
Jake asked, his voice a little too casual. The sound came again, a little louder this time.
There.
She breathed, pointing towards a darkened hallway. The whisper came again, closer now, a chilling moan that sent a shiver down their spines.
Okay, this is officially creepy. Maybe we should just go.
But Jake's curiosity had been piqued.
No. We're here now. We're not leaving until we figure out what that sound is.
The whisper came again, a low, guttural moan that seemed to claw its way up from the depths of the house. It drew them forward, an invisible hand guiding their steps. They reached the end of the hallway, their flashlights illuminating a heavy wooden door. It stood slightly ajar, as if inviting them in. The whispering seemed to emanate from beyond the threshold. The air grew heavy, saturated with a palpable sense of dread. Ben reached for the doorknob, his hand hovering just above the cold metal.
Maybe we shouldn't.
Don't be a wimp, Ben.
Jake said, pushing past him. He grasped the doorknob, his hand closing around the cold metal. It wouldn't turn. The door was locked. The whispering intensified, a chorus of voices rising in volume. Lisa covered her ears, trying to block out the sound.
Let me try.
Ben, his face pale in the flickering flashlight beam, stepped forward. His voice was tight with apprehension.
He examined the door more closely, his fingers tracing the strange symbols etched into the wood.
What are those?
Lisa whispered, her voice trembling.
I don't know, but I don't think we should be messing with this.
He gave the door a tentative push, and to their surprise, it creaked open. The room beyond was small and dusty, illuminated only by the beam of their flashlights. In the corner, partially hidden by shadows, was a small wooden chest, its lid slightly ajar. The whispering had stopped. An unsettling silence descended upon them, broken only by the sound of their own breathing.
I don't like this.
She whispered, her voice barely audible. Jake, ignoring her unease, stepped into the room. He approached the chest, his curiosity overriding any fear he might have felt. As he lifted the lid, a wave of cold air washed over them, carrying with it the faint scent of lavender and something else. A child's laughter echoed through the room, high-pitched and filled with an unnerving glee. The laughter hung in the air, sharp and piercing. sending chills down their spines.
Put it back, Jake. Please, let's just go.
Jake hesitated, his hand hovering over the doll. He gently lifted the doll from its resting place, its porcelain skin cold and smooth against his fingertips.
I don't like this. Something's not right.
Ben muttered, his gaze darting nervously around the room. The shadows seemed to deepen, pressing in on them like suffocating darkness.
It's just a doll. A creepy old doll.
But even as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had awakened something dark and ancient. The temperature plummeted, the air growing thick and heavy, making it difficult to breathe. The single tear-like streak on the doll's face glimmered under the flashlight beam, seeming to pulse with an eerie inner light. And then, the room began to shift.
What's happening?
Lisa gasped, her hand flying to her chest as if to ward off an unseen blow. Ben stumbled backward, knocking over the rocking chair. He fumbled for his flashlight, but it slipped from his grasp, plunging them into near darkness. The laughter echoed again, louder this time, seeming to come from all directions at once. A low growl vibrated through the room, seeming to shake the very foundation of the house. The whispers, once faint and mournful, now morphed into blood-curdling screams. Lisa cried out, burying her face against Ben's chest as he desperately tried to shield her from whatever unseen horror was closing in.
We have to get out of here.
Ben shouted, his voice barely audible above the cacophony of sound. He grabbed Jake's arm, trying to pull him towards the door.
Jake, let's go!
But Jake remained rooted to the spot. Panic surged through Ben.
Lisa, come on!
He screamed, grabbing her hand and pulling her towards the wall. They scrambled along the wall, their hands brushing against cold, damp stone. The screams were deafening now, a chorus of tormented souls rising from the depths of the house. But through the terror, Ben thought he heard something else. A voice, faint and distant, calling his name. There, at the end of the hallway, a faint light flickered.
This way!
Ben urged, pulling Lisa towards the ethereal light. The hallway seemed to stretch before them, their escape route obscured by swirling shadows and the oppressive darkness.
Ben, wait, I can't keep up.
The air crackled with unseen energy, a tangible manifestation of the terror that pulsed around them. Lisa stumbled after him, her breath catching in her throat.
Just a little further, Lisa. We can make it.
They ran, their footsteps echoing on the wooden floor, each footfall a prayer for salvation. The shadows reached for them, their long skeletal fingers brushing against their skin.
I can see it, Ben. We're almost there.
Jake, come on! We have to go! We can't stay here any longer!
Ben risked a glance over his shoulder, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. Jake stood at the entrance of the room, his silhouette framed by the eerie green light emanating from the doll. The light seemed to pulse, casting unsettling shadows on the walls. His face was a mask of terror, his eyes wide and vacant, his mouth open in a silent scream. It was as if he was trapped in a nightmare he couldn't wake from. He seemed frozen, trapped in the doll's thrall, his will consumed by whatever malevolent force had taken hold of him. The air around him felt thick with an unseen, oppressive presence.
Jake, come on, we have to go. Please, snap out of it.
But Jake didn't move. He stood there, a puppet on invisible strings, his gaze fixed on the doll in his hand. The doll's eyes seemed to glow, holding him captive. The laughter echoed again, louder than ever, a chilling counterpoint to Ben's desperate plea. It reverberated through the halls, mocking their fear. Ben turned back towards Lisa, his face a mask of anguish and indecision. He felt torn between saving his friend and escaping the horror that surrounded them. Lisa reached out to him, her expression mirroring his terror. Her eyes pleaded with him to make a decision, to do something before it was too late. The ethereal light bathed them in its warm glow, a stark contrast to the cold, malevolent light emanating from the room behind them. It felt like a beacon of hope in the midst of their despair. Ben felt Lisa's hand tighten around his, grounding him in the moment. Her touch was a lifeline, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this nightmare. Her eyes, wide and filled with terror, met his. In that shared gaze they found a silent understanding, a mutual resolve to survive. In that moment, he knew they couldn't wait for Jake. The house was alive with malevolence, and every second they lingered put them in greater danger. He wouldn't leave his friend behind, not willingly, but something told him that Jake was already lost, his soul claimed by the darkness that permeated the house. The thought tore at his heart, but he had to face reality. He made a decision, a choice born of desperation and a sliver of hope that they might still escape this nightmare. It was a gamble, but it was their only chance. With a final, lingering glance back at his friend, he turned and ran towards the light, pulling Lisa along with him. The light seemed to promise safety, a way out of the darkness that threatened to consume them. The laughter followed them, echoing through the hallway, a constant reminder of the horror they were fleeing. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once, chilling them to the bone. Ben didn't dare look back, fearing that if he did, he wouldn't be able to resist the urge to go back for Jake, to share his friend's fate, whatever it may be. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat a desperate plea for survival. The light enveloped them, warm and comforting, a stark contrast to the cold dread that had gripped them moments before. It was like a beacon of hope in the suffocating darkness. For a brief moment, Ben allowed himself to believe that they had escaped, that they had outrun the darkness. He felt a flicker of relief, a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, they were safe. But the moment was fleeting, shattered by Lisa's scream, a sound filled with such raw terror that it stopped his heart. It was a scream that spoke of unspeakable horrors, of something far worse than they had imagined.
Lisa!
He spun around, his blood turning to ice in his veins. Lisa was no longer beside him. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut, leaving him breathless and terrified. He was alone in the hallway, the ethereal light fading, the shadows deepening around him. The oppressive darkness seemed to close in, suffocating him with its weight. And then he saw it. The doll lay on the floor, its porcelain face illuminated by its own internal light. It was an eerie, unnatural glow that sent shivers down his spine. It was as if it had always been there, waiting for them, a trap set by something ancient and evil. The doll's presence was malevolent, a silent witness to their terror. The laughter echoed again, closer this time, and Ben realized with a sickening certainty that it was coming from behind him. The sound was more menacing, more personal, as if it was directed solely at him. He turned slowly, his blood turning to ice in his veins. Each movement felt like an eternity, the fear paralyzing him. The shadows swirled and coalesced, taking on a familiar form. It was a shape he knew all too well, one that haunted his nightmares. Jake stood before him, his eyes glowing with the same eerie green light as the doll, a cruel smile twisting his lips. It was a sight that filled Ben with a dread so profound it threatened to consume him.
You left me, but you'll never leave now. The words were a chilling promise, a declaration that their nightmare was far from over.
Dawn broke over Ash Hollow, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, a stark contrast to the darkness that had consumed the night. The town stirred, its residents awakening to the promise of a new day, oblivious to the horrors that had unfolded within the walls of Grant Manor. The silence, once a comforting blanket, now held a chilling quality. It was the silence of unanswered questions, of secrets buried deep within the earth. Words spread like wildfire. Whispers, hushed and urgent, replaced the morning greetings. The three friends, once so full of life, were gone, vanished without a trace. Their disappearance sent shockwaves through the community, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked at the edges of their peaceful existence. Search parties were assembled. Flashlights cut through the morning mist as volunteers combed the woods surrounding the manor, their voices calling out names that were met with only the echo of their own desperation. But there was no sign of the missing teenagers, no trace, no clue as to their whereabouts. Days turned into weeks. The initial shock gave way to a dull ache of grief that settled over the town like a shroud. The once vibrant community now moved in slow motion, each day blending into the next, as if time itself had been tainted by the sorrow that enveloped them. The missing posters, once a symbol of hope, faded in the unrelenting sun, their edges curling like forgotten dreams. They were a stark reminder of the unanswered questions that haunted every corner of the town. Grant Manor stood silent, a watchful sentinel guarding its secrets. Its windows, like eyes, seemed to follow the townsfolk, a constant reminder of the mysteries that lay within. The whispers continued, no longer confined to the shadows. They seeped into conversations, into the very fabric of the town, a chilling undercurrent that no one could escape. They swirled in the wind, echoed in the empty streets, a constant reminder of the tragedy that had befallen their town. The wind carried with it the voices of the past, a haunting melody that played on repeat. Some whispered of ancient curses, of vengeful spirits seeking retribution. The old books and artifacts in the dimly lit room seemed to hold answers, but no one dared to delve too deeply. Others spoke of a darkness that had consumed the teenagers, a darkness that lingered in the air, waiting to claim its next victims. The forest, once a place of adventure, now stood as a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded. But no one dared to venture too close to the manor. The fear was too great, the risk too high. The once curious and brave now kept their distance, their courage eroded by the unknown. Not anymore. The fear was palpable, a tangible presence that hung heavy in the air. It was in the eyes of the townsfolk, in their hushed conversations, in the way they hurried past the manor without looking back. The truth of what happened that night remained locked within the walls of Grant Manor. The boarded-up windows and locked doors were a testament to the secrets that refused to be uncovered. A secret shared only by the shadows and the dust motes dancing in the faint moonlight that filtered through the grime-covered windows. The manor held its breath, waiting for the day when the truth would finally be revealed. The whispers continued, a chilling reminder that some doors are best left unopened, some secrets better left buried. The flickering shadows seem to agree, dancing in silent agreement. The screen fades to black, leaving behind a lingering sense of unease, a feeling that the story was far from over.